lockdown, more than the COVID, the lockdown had a significant impact on the business. And I think our volumes were down by almost 30% um, for the first 1.5 months while the lockdown was in effect. I think in the last couple of weeks, as lockdown has started getting relaxed, we are seeing some recovery, strong recovery in volumes, and almost every sector is bouncing back except for travel and lending. And all of these has again affects the first one as well, because when volumes are down, when business are scaling, it has an impact on employee morale as well. And that is also another thing that we are trying to solve for. So we did first thing that we did was to look back and see that how financially stable are we, and we did full analysis and everything, and we realized that we are pretty strong financially because we raised a large round and less than a year back, and we have enough and more to survive through the crisis. So we organized on all hands, told people like what the situation is, and hey, none of your jobs or your pays are at risk. So we announced no pay cuts, no layoffs after doing the analysis. We did do some reduction in discretionary spends at this time because not a very good time to scale up business. We launched certain things, like for example, we launched a platform to enable donations on our site, and we waived off fees for that. We saw a large number of donations on Razorpay platform. We launched our EPOS app, which allows offline merchants to accept payments through digital channels and allowed contactless payments in offline stores. So really good traction on that. We are working with a lot of B2B supply chain companies to digitize supply chains. So those are some opportunities. So that was the third step. And I think that is how Razorpay has been operating in these times. For us, I think the lockdown was a mixed bag. There were a couple of things that gained, but a lot of things that went down. Almost every segment, like general retail, e-commerce, even grocery, everything went down because supply chains were disrupted due to lockdown, even though the demand was really high. And that's why we saw business fall down on a portfolio level by 30%. Certain segments like travel and hospitality were down by like 80-90%. And like certain segments still continue to gain, like gaming, online education, bill payments, they gained by almost 25-30%. But overall, counting all of that, the portfolio impact was net 30% negative for us. And that sustained through from mid of March to entire April and almost till the last week of May. The last 2 weeks of May and now in like the first week of June, we are seeing strong recovery happening. Almost every segment has bounced back to almost 80% of pre-COVID volumes, except for travel and lending, which continue to stay really low. E-commerce has bounced back really strongly. It's almost back to pre-COVID levels, and in fact, it's bouncing above. In some days, higher than pre-COVID levels. I guess it is in our conversations. It seems like because there was a lot of pent-up demand that got built up during the lockdown, and because people can't step out of their houses, they were just waiting for e-commerce stores to open up so they can place orders. Yeah, so that is what we're doing. So like the resources that were aligned and focused strongly on travel and hospitality, they're being realigned to focus on segments which are growing a lot, like education, like grocery, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that how can we best utilize the resources we have with us and try to find opportunities during this time. There are a lot of segments like grocery where we are seeing a lot of offline traditional businesses trying to go online. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space. And that's where an internal alignment, it's something we have already done. We have internally aligned more folks to segments which are growing and reduced people involved in segments which are struggling at this time. There are segments which are not impacted. In fact, some segments which are growing. For example, gaming is a segment which generally actually has had a huge. In general, there's a viewpoint that gaming in India is not monetizable. It is not a good business segment to get into. But during lockdown, we saw that people are not just playing games a lot; they're actually paying for games, which was a shift, and I think which could be a long-term shift in the way gaming as a segment is perceived in the industry. In general, we have seen very few startups come in the gaming space in the country because it is perceived that it's not a monetizable space. But I think during COVID and post-COVID, we could see that perception change. So gaming is one such segment. Similarly, wealth management and mutual fund, even though markets were down, we have not seen any impact on that segment. The volumes have stayed stable. Simply, it feels like the population is more aware that when markets are down, they need to continue to buy SIPs and they continue to keep investing in SIPs to take advantage of that. And we have seen that volumes have stayed almost the same. In some cases, they've actually gained, even though markets are struggling, which was again a surprising trend for us too. Besides that, like there are segments like bill payments, education, online education, and things like that, which continue to scale up in this time. In offline, we hadn't decided to go into offline payment space for a while. But in these times, we saw a lot of offline stores wanted to accept payments through online channels because they didn't want to use a physical POS terminal. They didn't want to exchange a physical card and things like that. So we relaunched an app called ePOS that we had launched during demonetization. We relaunched that, which allows businesses to download an app on their phone and accept payments through digital channels. So they can send a link to the customer, accept payments, and that is it. And we've seen really good traction on that. So we relaunched that, revamped it a lot to solve for COVID social distancing issues. And it has seen a lot of scale up. On the alternate side, one of our plans was to expand internationally this year. And we were trying to do a lot of things. There was a lot of travel scheduled in Southeast Asia. And our goal was by end of the year, we should launch at least in one country, so Southeast Asia. That is completely on hold right now because anyways, international travel is not possible. And cross-border transactions are at all-time low. So we decided that probably not the right time to spend time and energy in that space. Not particularly. We have a very strong focus on SME. We have a segregation of SME and enterprise sales. So we have a very strong focus on SME, and parallelly we have a small sales team which targets enterprise clients. So that equation doesn't change much because there are demand on both sides. In fact, SME is doing particularly better compared to enterprise right now, simply because there are a lot of new companies who are coming online and trying to be internet companies at this time. So SME side, we have seen actually increase in demand. Enterprise side, it's mostly like certain verticals which continue to grow. So there's stronger focus on certain verticals, and certain verticals which are struggling, we have reduced focus on them. Yeah, SMEs make a larger churn, but generally volumes are lower. So 70% of our revenue comes from enterprise, 30% comes from SME. Overall, of course, lending is a segment which will continue to struggle overall across the board. The way our Razorpay Capital business used to operate is that we are not a lender. We work with lenders on one side and we have merchants on the other side, and we enable lending on our platform. Of course, short term, there was a slowdown because, well, there's a lot of demand right now. There's not enough supply. Like there are not a lot of lenders who are willing to lend right now because they're all concerned about moratorium and want to see how business activity scales up back. But I think long term, we believe that Razorpay Capital will bounce back very quickly because the demand for lending will go up significantly in the next 3 to 6 months. And I think from a lender's perspective, also the way they do lending, they would want it to be more strongly backed by data. They want it to be more strongly controlled in an ecosystem. And Razorpay Capital provides that. So when lenders decide to start writing checks again, platforms like Razorpay Capital will provide them a lot more comfort than direct lending, where they don't know what or how the merchant ends up using the money. But yeah, short term, we have slowed it. It has slowed down because the supply of capital in the market is low. Yeah, so actually the neo-banking side is going pretty smoothly. A small hiccup everywhere, like even so as soon as COVID happens, of course, we also everything slowed down, including neo-banking, because merchants are just trying to see that, hey, can they survive this? But I think now things are back to normal. One of the advantages that we see is that traditionally neo-banking has one significant disadvantage to traditional banks, in the sense that like a lot of merchants in the country still prefer that they want to have a bank which is an office nearby, so that they can walk into a branch and do things physically. Right. Because of COVID, that's not possible anyway. People don't want they want to interact with the bank digitally, whether it's a traditional bank or a neo-bank. And that brings neo-banking at the same platform as traditional banking. That now both of these platforms are just online. They're just a website or an app. And both, whether it's a traditional bank or a neo-bank, you interact with them only through a mobile app or through a website. So when both of them are just competing on a digital experience, I believe neo-banking can win and provide a much better digital experience compared to traditional banks. So I believe it's a net positive for neo-banking, because that disadvantage of not having a physical presence is not so important anymore. The way we are looking at it is that there are a lot of opportunities that are coming up because people want to do social distancing. They don't want to exchange cash. They don't want to exchange physical paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
and we are building solutions to solve for that in various in industries where that's still the norm. For example, B2B supply chain is one space where we are doing a lot of work in providing in enabling digitization of that side. So, for example, still today, most of the B2C supply chains, like distributor to retailer and all of that network, runs on cash. That's one area that we are looking very closely in digitizing that. Then, of course, education. Traditional education has always had cash and check-based payments, but we are looking at that. How can we digitize that very strongly? So there are a lot of such things. I think overall the idea is that wherever there is a lot of physical touch points for a transition, how can we reduce those physical touch points? That's the idea.